approach it is obviously zetetic, but we figured out that it is absolutely 100% refraction, which causes the apparent counter-rotation of the southern stars. And I could give you a few examples of why, but just one example would be is if you're in the far northern hemisphere and you've got basically, say, 1/4 of your frame near Polaris, you can get that, perfectly centralized spinning sort of, it almost looks like a tunnel effect with time lapse. And then to the southwest of that, and mind you, you're in the far north, so you're not even near the equator, right? But you'll start to see counter rotation of the equatorial stars, or really of the tropical, the Tropic of Cancer stars, which, by the way, you shouldn't start to see counter rotation until well beyond the equator. And so what this shows, and there's tons of other experimental data that shows that when you apply a convex lens, which, by the way, the atmosphere, that if you go outside, especially out to, like, let's just say you're out standing in the middle of the ocean, there's going to be definitely, necessarily, a convex lens of atmosphere that surrounds you equidistantly on all sides and raises up, maybe a little higher because the atmosphere gets thinner above you. But we all exist within a convex lens, a subjective convex lens of atmosphere. And that convex lens of atmosphere does all sorts of things to light. It's what causes the sun to appear to rise. The sunrise and sunset wouldn't work on the flat Earth, assuming a 4,000-mile distant sun, without atmospheric refraction. And it just so happens that atmospheric refraction indeed causes light to bend towards the lower density gradient. And everybody knows that the lower density gradient is towards the ground. And so when you apply known numbers in terms of the makeup and density of the atmosphere, scientifically accepted numbers that can be tested by people with weather balloons, that when you apply refraction to in a program called, well, for example, Cinema 4D, which is it's like an AutoCAD animation program that allows you to include refraction. And by entering the known values of refraction, it causes a perfect spiral of stars central to the North Pole star Polaris to appear to counter-rotate in the south. And so it's what it is. It's an atmospheric condition. And, I've had people tell me, and I don't know if they're lying or making it up, but I've had people tell me that they could look at the Southern Cross at the same time, and they live in the far south of Australia, and they could observe the Southern Cross at the same time as someone in the far south of Africa, and they could also observe the Southern Cross at the same time as someone in the far south of America. Now, what's the big problem with this? Well, at least one or two of those places would be daytime. So there's no way you could observe the Southern Cross in all three places at once. And so what it really appears is happening is that, and it's demonstrable, this isn't a theory, atmospheric refraction solves all of the problems that people are clinging to in terms of the counter-rotation of the stars. And it's just a matter of time that this is proven more and more and more and more until people can't argue the southern stars anymore. It's really quite amazing. But when you apply a convex lens to a spiral shape in all sorts of scenarios, whether it's digital programs or whether it's magnetic fields or whether it's a simple, like a thick glass dome convex lens to a simple spiral on a piece of paper, no matter how you apply this all sorts of ways, it always, never fails to cause counter rotation of the outside of that spiral pattern. And so, I've even heard people go so far as to say, because everybody wants to abandon the quote-unquote azimuthal equidistant model end quote. But of course, the AE, or azimuthal equidistant, we call it AE, the AE matrix, the AE projection, is not a model. And so that's the deception. And I think a lot of people, including people like Tiger Dan, threw the baby out with the bathwater because they didn't understand the inherent flaws with the AE projection itself. The AE projection isn't a model. It's got issues. It's no more a model than the Mercator projection is a model. However, the Mercator projection works for navigation, even though it's not a model, and the 90-degree south point is represented as a horizontal line 25,000 miles long, just like the equator. So that's not a model, right? You got a single point stretched to infinity on a Mercator projection. But in terms of the AE projection, it's accurate in terms of a timekeeping mechanism and for possibly weather patterns. But it's only relative to whatever the central point is. And the central point of all AE projections is the far north, the North Pole, right? And so, for people there's a lot of people that are abandoning the AE projection because it was presented to them as a model, which is ridiculous. And they'll say things like, well, the sun can't do this, and the stars can't do that, and there's no way the sun could be doing this, and there's no way the sun could be doing that. But to me, this is, I mean, I believe they mean well, but they have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm not saying that I do either. But what I will say is that nobody has the slightest freaking clue what the sun is, what is powering it, what it's doing, and we're all seeing some. Yeah, go ahead.
Nikola Tesla had some theories on that, didn't he? About electromagnetism.
Yeah,